Welcome back to my channel. I'm Joe with Smokin Joe's Pit Barbecue. On today's video, I'm going to be making up some delicious blueberry maple sausages. Stay tuned. Alright, so before we get to cutting and grinding our meat, I do want to go over the ingredients list for our blueberry maple sausages, okay? I do have 12.5 pounds of pork, so I'm using 1.2 pounds of the maple seasoning. Now, you can buy this maple seasoning from Pia Seasonings, and the whole bag will do 25 pounds. I measured out half of it, it's 1.2 pounds of that. I'm also going to be adding 2.5 teaspoons of the speed cure right here. You can also get this from Pia Seasonings. And the reason I'm adding this curing salt is because I'm going to be smoking these blueberry maple sausages at a very low temperature. Okay, if I was just going to grill them, then obviously I don't have to use this. The next ingredient is I am going to be using 10% of the total weight in blueberries. Remember, 454 grams in 1 pound. Okay, so I've got 12.5 pounds of pork. That equals 5,675 grams times 10% is 567.5 grams of blueberries, okay? And I'm also gonna be adding a secret ingredient, half a cup of pure maple syrup. This was graciously provided by Canadian Jim, all the way from Canada. So this is pure maple syrup, and again, I'm gonna be adding half a cup of the maple syrup into the sausage mixture, okay? I've got my items in my freezer, I'll be right back. All right, so I've got 12.5 pounds of boneless pork shoulder here. And again, because my grinder is so big, I can leave these chunks a pretty large size, okay? Now these pork shoulders have been in my freezer for the last 45 minutes, so the outside surface of it is partially frozen. That's what you want. I gotta tell you, one thing that I'm learning, when you make sausage, your pork has got to stay extremely cold throughout the entire process. If you feel it's getting too warm, pop it in the freezer, okay? So I'm just going to cut these into cubes. Let me show you about the size that I'm going to be using here. Around this size, okay? Again, I got a pretty big grinder, and they will fit down that chute. So I'm going to finish cutting these up, and I'll bring you guys right back. All right, so I've got my pork shoulder all cubed up, so I'm going to add the 1.2 pounds of maple seasoning to the pork here. So this is a really fine seasoning right here, okay? Now I would normally add my seasonings at the end after I grind it, but because it is a fine seasoning, I'm gonna go ahead and add the seasoning now and grind the pork with the seasoning in it. And that's gonna really help distribute the maple seasoning throughout the entire pork, okay? All right, so I've got my hopper loaded. Always remember to drop a couple of pieces of your meat down the chute here. Never start your grinder dry. Just like that. Gonna go ahead and turn it on. So this pork is still extremely cold, and that's what you want. So I'm gonna finish grinding this up. I'll bring you guys right back. All right, so I've got the pork all ground up with the seasoning in it, and I did weigh out the blueberries, and it happened to be about 2 packs of blueberries, okay? These are what they call a dry pint of blueberries, but there was about 20 blueberries left. It came out to about 620 grams of blueberries, so I just added them in there. Now I did have these blueberries in my freezer for about 2 hours, so they're partially frozen. I'm just gonna add them to my sausage mixture and gently mix it up. So I definitely wanna see these blueberries in the sausage, and if I can keep them whole, that's what I'm aiming for, and that's why I froze them. All right, so at this point, I'm gonna go ahead and add the speed cure, the curing salt. Again, this was 2.5 teaspoons of the speed cure. Just make sure you evenly distribute that, just like that. And I'm also gonna add about half a cup of water, or maybe a quarter cup of water. Go ahead and mix it up in there. All right, so here's the half cup of maple syrup. And I tasted it with a spoon, and this is really good. So I know this maple syrup is gonna give a really nice flavor to these blueberry maple sausages. Okay? I'm just gonna mix it up a little bit more. All right, so that looks really good to me. And so far, the blueberries are holding up. We got really good protein extraction. So just gonna test it here real quick. And I just like to grab a little bit in my hand, and if it doesn't fall out, it's ready, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and add this to my stuffing container. And it has also been in the freezer, so it's extremely ice cold. Just pack it in there. Gotta make sure you take out all the air pockets. And I don't think I'm gonna get it all to fit, but that's okay. All right, so it looks like it all fit in this container. I'm gonna wash up and get our stuffer ready. Stay tuned. All right, so I got my stuffing container into my sausage stuffer. Now the next thing is just to bring out the sausage before you put your casing on your stuffing tube. Just bring it out to the end right here, and then back off the handle. All right, so now we're just gonna grab one of these casings and find the end of it. Sometimes it can get tricky, but I've done this a few times. So once you find the end, stick 2 fingers in there, just like this, and pick up some of that water. It helps slide the casing onto your stuffing tube and also rinses the center of that casing. Okay, just like this. Okay, make sure you get the air out of it. Pull it out just a little bit and tie a knot. Just like that, nice and tight. All right, I've got my assistant right here ready to crank away. Let's start stuffing. Oh, it looks like I overstuffed my container, but that's okay. We're gonna keep on going. We'll pick that up later. Oh, this is perfect. I definitely overstuffed my container. It came off the top, but that's okay. We'll clean that up. Oh yeah, those blueberries are staying nice and whole. They're rushing out of that stuffing tube. It's looking good. All right, I'm gonna finish stuffing this casing, and I'll bring you guys right back. All right, so I've got my casings all stuffed up, and I do have about 3 1/4 of these sausage rolls that I got out of this mixture. So now it's just time to twist them up, and I do measure out 6 1/2 inches right here on this tray. And what I like to do is just measure out 6 1/2 inches and then pinch in this area, measure another 6 1/2 inches and pinch, and then just twist in one direction. Now I can twirl them as well, but I'm gonna try not to this time because I splatter this stuff everywhere, okay? So I'm just gonna measure out, again, 6 1/2 inches, pinch right here, measure out another 6 1/2 inches. Don't have to be exact, okay? Pinch and pinch, and then just twist, just a couple of times. Okay, that's all you need. Let's do one more. 6 1/2, pinch. And I can feel those blueberries in there, okay? 6 1/2, pinch, and twist. Just like that. All right, I'm gonna finish twisting these up. We'll come back and see how many sausages we have. Stay tuned. All right, so we ended up with 43 blueberry maple sausages, and I gotta tell you, I'm really happy with the results so far. There's definitely some whole blueberries in these sausages. Now, I'm gonna put these in my fridge overnight, then tomorrow I'm gonna be popping them in my smoker. We'll see you then. All right, so it's the very next morning, and my sausages have been in my fridge for about 12 hours. Now, I don't like to leave them in there longer than that because they get too dry on the surface, okay? So I do have some laid out on these racks right here. Now these racks are what's gonna be going into my smoker, my PK100 smoker. So I just laid them out. I wanna show you what I did to get to this point, okay? So here's our sausage roll right here. And obviously this is the end where I tied a knot. And what I like to do is just take my kitchen scissors and cut right up against that knot, just like that, okay? Then I'm gonna separate these by cutting right in between each link. Just like that, okay? Just cut right in between the links. Try not to cut right up against that sausage. All right, so I've got these sausage links separated, and I'm just gonna spread them out on these racks, making sure that they do not touch. Now I do have my smoker preheating outside at 130 degrees. Now it is recommended that you dry out the casing, but we already did that in my fridge overnight. Okay, so I don't need to set my smoker at 100 degrees for about an hour to let the casings dry. These casings are already pretty dry. So just lay them out evenly. Make sure these sausages do not touch. All right, so I've got all these sausages separated and on these smoker racks. This is the sawdust that I'm going to be using in my PK100. I did fill it up about 3/4 of the way and added some water just to get the sawdust nice and moist. Now adding the water is going to get you a little bit more smoke, which is what we want. So the sawdust that I'm using today is from PS Seasonings as well. I got to tell you, PS Seasonings is your one-stop shop for everything sausage making, okay? So again, I have my smoker set at 130 degrees. We'll see you guys outside. All right, so there is a snowstorm moving in, so I got to move pretty quick. I did put the sawdust pan down the bottom, right on top of that burner. And here's my drip pan. Just gonna set this on the second to the bottom shelf. Now I did line it with foil. Just like that, that's gonna catch some of the drippings. I'm gonna close the door. Now I do have my smoker running at 130 degrees. All right, so I do have the intake on the door 3/4 of the way open, and the exhaust is 1/8 of the way open. And I do have a probe inside one of the sausages, and that's measuring 45 degrees. So again, I've got my smoker set at 130 degrees. We're gonna let this roll for 2 hours. I'll bring you guys back at that point. Stay tuned. All right, guys, so it's been 2 hours since we put our sausages in our smoker. So now I'm gonna turn the temperature up to 150 degrees. Just hit the set button, arrow up, and hit the set button again. And let's take a look at the sausage and see what it looks like 2 hours in. Whew, man, smoky. All right, so this is what we look like right now. The surface is still really moist, so that 150 degrees is really gonna start drying that casing out. Okay, so I'm gonna close the door, because again, we're in the middle of a snowstorm. Don't wanna lose that heat. All right, the internal temperature of our sausage right now is 106 degrees. Not sure if you guys can see that. Got some snowflakes on the face of this thermometer right here. So we're gonna let it run at 150 degrees for about an hour. At that point, I'll bring you guys back. We'll take a look at the sausage. Stay tuned. All right, so the total cook time right now is 3.5 hours. I let it go for an hour and a half instead of an hour, as I mentioned earlier. Now I am adding another full ash pan of the sawdust. If you can see, I funneled the sawdust towards the outside of the bowl. So I'm just gonna set this in the center of the burner again. Now you wanna dump your ash into an ash can if you have one, and don't throw it immediately in the trash because it'll still be pretty hot. So let's take a look at these sausages right here. Look at this, getting a really nice red color. So at this point, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna close the door and crank the temperature up to 165 degrees. Just like that. I'm gonna hit the set button a couple times and go to 165. And hit the set button again. Now the internal temperature of the sausage right now is 109 degrees. I'm gonna let this go for probably another hour and a half. I'll bring you guys back at that point. Stay tuned. All right, so I did want to bring you guys back real quick. I failed to mention that I did close the intake and the exhaust down. They're about 2/3 closed right now, both the intake and exhaust. This is really gonna start to build up some of that heat inside the smoker. We'll see you guys back in a bit. All right, so the total cook time is 5.5 hours now. And about an hour ago, I came out here and flipped the switch to the 1250 watt setting. And the reason I did that is because at the 625 watt setting, you only have a portion of that burner on. And since it's snowing outside and the temperature is probably like 19 degrees right now, you know, I think the smoker was struggling to keep up with that temperature. So I switched over to 1250 watts. Now the entire burner is gonna get nice and hot, and the temperature has definitely been maintaining. So let's take a look at these sausages. The internal temperature of the sausage is 127 degrees. Ooh, yes. Let's take a look at this one right here. Look at that gorgeous thing. Okay, nice and plump. I'm really liking that color. All right, so at this point, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna shut the door. I'm also gonna shut the intake 100% and my exhaust 100%. Now it's time to crank up the temperature to 225 degrees and finish cooking these sausages. All right, hit the set again. So at 225 degrees, we're gonna start cooking these sausages internally. I'm looking for 160 degrees. At that point, I'm gonna pull them off and put them in an ice bath. I'll bring you guys back at that point. Stay tuned. All right, so the total cook time is 6.5 hours, and the internal temperature of these sausages hit 160 degrees. So I'm just gonna open up this door and take a look at these sausages. Oh yeah, we are cooking. Holy smokes, look at this, guys. Beautiful looking sausages. I mean, look at this color. Oh my goodness. So what I've got here is an ice bath. Look at that. No, they're not hot, but I do have a rag just in case my fingers do get hot. So I'm just gonna pull these off. They're nice and plump. Holy smokes, look at that. Just gonna put them in this ice bath and stop that cooking process. I'm gonna finish pulling these off, and we'll see you guys inside. Stay tuned. All right, so here's the blueberry maple sausages. Now these are completely cooked, so all you gotta do is really warm them up on a skillet. For breakfast one morning, you can fire up your grill, you can smoke them. You just wanna get them to 160 degrees internal, but I'm really liking this. Really nice, beautiful color. So I did take some of these sausages that were completely cooled down. I've got my Heston Q induction burner right here with a cast iron skillet, and I'm warming them back up. I'll bring you guys right back. All right, let's see how we did on these sausages. By the way, I did make some blueberry Belgian waffles that you see right there. And I'm just gonna grab one of these sausages, nice and hot, off my cast iron skillet. Let's slice it up and see how we did. Now I can see the blueberries from the surface right here. Hopefully you guys can see that. But this is what I mean. You have a nice, juicy, plump sausage. And again, if you get a sausage that's completely wrinkled, that sausage is overcooked. Okay, these are perfectly cooked right here. They did come up to 160 degrees. There we go. Oh man, nice and tender. Look at that. Right out of the gate, we got 2 blueberries, 3 blueberries. Looks like we got enough blueberries for every bite. This is gonna be good. Nice and juicy as well. You can see the nice juiciness coming out of the sausage right here. All right, let's pour some of this Canadian maple syrup over my waffles. Look at this. Thanks again, Canadian Jim, for sending the syrup to me. Oh yes, this is gonna be delicious. Let's give it a taste. All right, let's see how we did on our blueberry maple sausages. I cannot wait to taste this. You know, I've been wanting to make these blueberry maple sausages for about 6 months, and the day is finally here. So I'm just gonna grab this one that's got double the blueberries. There we go. All right, so right out of the gate, I get a really good hickory smoke flavor. Then I get into that tender and juicy sausage. Then I get into those blueberries, nice and sweet. These are really good. Now I'm gonna try some with a piece of the waffle that's got some of that maple syrup in it. Grab this piece right here. It's gonna be a big bite. And here we go. Now that waffle with some of that maple syrup and the sausage, man, they pair extremely well. I can't get enough of this. So overall, I am really happy with my blueberry maple sausage. I think on the next batch, I might add some red pepper flake to half of the batch just to give it a little bit of kick. But I gotta tell you, paired with a waffle or maybe a pancake and eggs for breakfast, there is nothing better than a blueberry maple sausage. Thanks for watching this video. Make sure you check out all the links inside the description box for some of the items that I use in this video, including that PK100 smoker from PS Seasonings. If this is your first time here, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. And if you have any questions, ask them down below. Until next time, Joe with Smokin Joe Split Barbecue. See ya.